Well, Gerrard slipped and get the bars in here. Here's Rodriguez again. It's a stunning ball.
What is going on, guys? Jack here, and welcome to For The Fans for the 9th of August 2015. We are back and better than ever for this year's 2015-16 Premier League season. Hopefully you guys enjoy the first of hopefully many podcasts that will be coming your way every week. And other than that, let's get started.
Hello there, it's me, but we're back, Jack. It's been a while. I feel like I could do a fancy intro, but really, we've been away for 11 months. But now we're back.
11 months to the day as well. I feel like you stole that quote from me earlier when we were discussing it pre-recording. But yeah, we're back and better than ever. This is kind of, I guess, something spontaneous. We weren't planning this, were we, until about a week ago. We were kind of sat on the eve of the Premier League season and it was kind of like, should we just bring back For The Fans? And then we got a little bit carried away. And well, here we are now with a third wheel. Introduce him. Give him the fancy intro.
He's known for podcast intro fame and other sorts of input in the past. It's Callum Keane. Keane, how are you?
Chat with Benji and other things. Hello, boys.
Yeah. Actually, Keane, you were on, we did about 6 shows at the beginning of last season. You were on 2 of them, and I wasn't. So
I was on 2 of them.
Yeah, you did 2 previews, didn't you?
Oh, yeah, I was.
Yeah. You did.
He doesn't even remember. It was that memorable in his existence. It was a highlight of last year for him, so we brought him back permanently.
Just think, in a few weeks' time, you will be some people's favourite person on this show.
I highly doubt it.
No, it'll happen. It'll be awful. So, boys, we best get talking about the Premier League. That's what we're back with. But before we get there, Keno, you're there?
Yeah, I am.
Now, at the beginning of last season, we gave some predictions to things we thought might happen. And it just so happens, Keno, that you found them.
I found them on my computer within a couple of 10 minutes of starting recording for this, which was quite good because we can make it the intro. So yeah, last year Jack and Ben gave me quite a lot of predictions for what would happen.
Can I just give full disclosure? These were done mutually between us, and any that are horrifically wrong were entirely Ben's predictions for last season, not mine.
No, they were. Yeah, they were done. Sort of Jack and Ben discussed them and then decided on a name or a team or whatever. And yeah, so I've got this sheet that I've just found again. So we've got For The Fans podcast predictions 2014-15, so last season.
Yeah.
Winner. Who did you go for, boys?
Chelsea, which we got right. Do we get a point for this? Is there going to be a fancy pinging sound effect, like a game show?
I feel like there needs to be a ping, doesn't there?
I'll give you some points. So that's one, and then you're not getting a point for the second one because that was Liverpool runner-up. So
we were close. We were really close. it was till the last season, and that Stoke fixture screwed us over. But yeah, never mind.
So that, 5th Spurs. That was quite good. I like that because it could be quite a few teams that could finish there. So you did well then.
Expert analysis by us there.
I would say though, the one that has impressed me the most out of the list was the teams that you predicted to go down, and you got two out of the 3 to go down right.
Well, there you are.
So you went with QPR and Burnley, and then Leicester, who did stay up. But QPR and Burnley, not bad shots. I'm taking
that to the bank. All right, next.
We've got a run of wrong predictions here now. Dirtiest team, QPR. I'll put them all together. Player of the year, Cesc Fabregas, which maybe up until Christmas might have been right, but not afterwards.
Yeah, true.
Young player of the year, Sterling. To be fair to you two guys, no one would have seen Harry Kane coming. So
that's a very good point.
I mean, he's English. We should get half a point.
We'll take that. Young English. Love that.
You can have an honorary point for that. Top goal scorer, Diego Costa.
Came third. I mean, come on.
Decent. Also, another impressive one. Top assist maker. You did say Fabregas, and after a bit of research before the show, we did find that it was indeed Cesc Fabregas.
Can I just say, the viewers, they've been missing us for 11 months. They probably thought they'd never hear a For The Fans quiz again, and we're opening with one, and it's what a treat.
Yeah. But the thing is, we're doing the quiz 12 months ago. But I mean, carry on. I'm loving the quiz.
It's like a time capsule.
This gets a bit awkward now because of something I said. But go on.
We'll do the team of the year last. So surprise package as well, very impressive. Southampton.
Yeah, so everyone was doubting them, but we thought differently.
Yeah,
They finished 7th, didn't they? That was a good
did.
season.
That was a really good one. Disappointment. We were kind of sort of umming and ahhing on this because you guys said Man City. Now you could say because they didn't win the title, it was a disappointing season.
I'd agree with that, Keno. Point.
Well,
but we did say Liverpool were going to finish second,
Yeah.
and City did finish second,
No,
which really
who could have foreseen that Liverpool selling Luis Suarez would have resulted in such a poor finish? Come on.
everyone
How was
except
that-
Brendan Rodgers.
And us, apparently.
Well, yes, that's true.
So team of the year after that. This isn't too bad apart from one.
Well, actually, two are pretty bad, considering one of them played about 4 games. But yeah.
Courtois, Coleman, Dejan Lovren, John
That's it.
Terry, Gary Cahill, and then we had Sterling, Fabregas, Ramsey, and then Costa, Sturridge, and Hazard up front.
In our defence, we thought City would do poorly, so we didn't put like any City players in there.
No.
Retrospectively, I would have probably taken out Lovren, Sterling, and Sturridge, and maybe popped in Company, Aguero, and like Silva.
To be fair honest, I'm actually surprised at how good our logic was behind our guesses, because if this was just me, but I guess this is a testament to your contribution to this, I probably would have said City and the disappointment, then put like 6 of their players in the team of the year and not
You would have
cross-referenced.
You would have had Charlie Austin in team of the year, wouldn't you?
Yeah,
Charlie Austin, double figures.
Oh, God.
He's been linked with everyone. Everton, Spurs, Newcastle. He's coming home.
Where did he play? Where did he play this week?
I don't want to comment on that.
In the
It might have been
QPR.
Charlton. It might have been Charlton, and they may have lost 2-0. But
Well, there you are then. No more to say, Your Honour. Carry on, Callum.
Well, finally, the random event prediction of the season, which by very nature is a bit of a shot in the dark. I think this might have been mostly Ben.
Definitely.
A year on.
Yeah.
Ben said Roy Keane will take over the Villa at the time he was assistant manager and keep them up on the last day of the season despite being sat in the stands.
Little did I know, Roy Keane's best friend, Tim Sherwood, would go on to do almost that. So, you know. Well, to be fair, I predicted that Lambert would be gone.
Yeah.
So, I'll have that. That's an extra point. That's a half a point. I'll have that. But yeah, so that now brings us on very neatly, actually. Like that was not a planned feature until we did it, but there is a planned feature. We haven't got a jingle, so I'll create one. Ben's jingle and feature of the week. Can we keep that in for next week? or-
poetic. I'll keep the soundbite. We'll add some jingly music in the background.
Brilliant.
Can I just say, I don't know what this is. I don't know if Keno knows what this is going to be. I'm actually terrified because I have a feeling it's going to be something that puts me on the spot because it's Ben.
Well, sort of. So, you two don't know what this feature is. I've given you no sort of inkling whatsoever other than it fits with what we've just done. So I spent a good couple of hours this week going through things we've said in the past and how correct they are or are not.
Is this from last year's preview shows?
The game is for you two to tell me who said it out of me, you and out of us three, right? So
Okay, let me get comfortable here because I feel like this is going to get really awkward really quickly. So.
I've got about 10. So are you ready?
Oh, excellent.
Right, the first one. Evans, Jones and Smalling isn't that bad. Who said that in reference to Manchester United's leaky defence?
Jack.
That sounds like I might have said it. In hindsight, I'm completely wrong.
Right, the space.
Can I just say, it's actually said Smalling. I'm like, actually, at one point I did back Smalling. Oh, gosh.
Actually, he played very well this weekend. We'll talk about it later. Okay, the next one. Tom Cleverley will end up at Newcastle. Mark my words.
My word is something that you say all the time, so I'm going to go with Ben. I don't know what Keno thinks.
It could have been me.
It could. Well, you're a Villa fan. He wasn't moaning at you.
And it might have been when we were linked with him last summer.
It was. I'll say this much. He's already at the Villa at this point.
Okay.
I think Ben. I'm going to go with Ben just because the mark my words thing sounds like something you'd say.
Callum?
Yeah.
All right. You are correct.
Excellent.
That one was YouTube's Dr. Ben GFM. The next one. In terms of a team that have done the best business, I think Hull have got to be up there.
That's me. That's me. Gosh, I know it's me. Right.
That is our favourite watch the space. Hull City got relegated.
Can I just say, they made some signings that on paper look quite good until Snodgrass got injured on the first day of the season.
Can I just stop you there, mate? Because what you've just said there is quite funny. I think the paper makes Hull signings look really good, but I think the pitch makes them look inadequate. Who said that?
probably. I'll go with you again, I think, on that one.
That was me. So yes, Jack, on paper you did think they looked quite good.
They did look quite... Like, if you look at those signings that you made, it's the kind of transfer window that you do in Football Manager, and you look back on it and go, yeah, that went well, and then by May, you know it was terrible. In hindsight, I should have thought about it like it was FM. Some of the signings they made were very, like, Football Manager-esque. But, yeah.
When asked where Newcastle will finish, who said, I mentioned top 8 earlier, so I'll go 7th. Newcastle, who didn't do very well last season.
I feel like this is me again.
I think it might be.
Jack, you are correct. It was you. You thought Newcastle would finish 7th. They didn't finish 7th.
Can I do, to be fair, okay. This was this pre the start of last season?
It's a mixture of both, but yeah, it was.
Because I don't know, like they look quite good on paper. Again, paper. So this was all like without seeing them play. But that Newcastle side had one of the worst kind of team spirits about them I think I've ever seen in the Premier League. Like for the last few games, how Carver like kept them up, I don't know. So
it wasn't John Carver that kept them up. It was Hanson Pardew.
Now this next one seems a bit facetious now because he had a very, very good performance at the weekend. But I wrote this before the weekend. Who said Jefferson Montero is one of the best players out on the wing in a one-on-one situation?
Keno.
Was that me?
That sounds like something you'd say.
I think
that was Callum Keane.
Well, I'm standing by that.
Well done. You know,
great it is one-on-one.
Could have gone worse. Okay, who said they're going to really struggle next year? I think there's no way they'll stay up.
Who about?
Yeah.
Southampton.
Oh my gosh, I know who.
I don't think I would say that, so I'm not.
I have a horrible feeling that's me again.
That would be Callum Keane.
Wow.
Really?
Who thought they would very much struggle.
Well, that makes me feel better about saying Newcastle finished 7th because they didn't go down, whereas, well.
Okay, next one. Bojan is certainly a step up from Matthew Etherington.
I think that was me as well.
That sounds like something you'd say.
That was Work the Space.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, that was Work the Space. And then finally, I think there's a grateful child in Sunderland that would like to get their hands on Jack Rodwell.
That's definitely. It's either you or Keane. It's you. Yeah, it must be you.
Jack, you don't have the wit to do that. Let's be honest. I think it was probably Ben.
Okay, the correct answer is Work the Space.
No.
Jack said it.
Did I? Okay, well there you go. I have more wit than.
I'm going to go back and listen to the tape.
I feel like everyone will now. They won't believe half the stuff we said. I feel like this is a selling kind of ploy you put in to go back and listen to last year's show and mock us on Twitter afterwards.
That concludes Ben's feature of the week. Okay, yep, that's the jingle.
I love it.
So shall we get on with some Premier League talk then, folks? I feel like it's time. Is it time? It's time, right? So then we'll kick off with what was one of the most surprising fixtures of the week. Jack, we'll come to you first. Leicester with a great win against a dreadful Sunderland defensive display.
Yeah, well, I loved Advocat's quote after this of, after 10 minutes, there were 3 crosses and 3 goals. And at this level, that can't happen. That really sums up like the opening to this game. But to be fair on Leicester, I didn't realise this until I was looking back. They won 7 of their last 9 games at the end of the season. And obviously, they've had quite a big shake-up in terms of Pearson going out. But
well, how big of a difference do you think that will make to Leicester long term? Because Ranieri's gone in there, and the start, well, in reality, you couldn't have really asked for a better start.
No. Well, the thing is, Ranieri's quite known for kind of tinkering around with his teams from game to game. And I feel like with a team like Leicester, they don't really seem to have... They don't have any standout players in specific positions, if that makes sense. Like I kind of feel like that's going to help them if he can change it around. But in this game specifically, I want to really praise Leicester highly, but to be honest, I think it was more just sheer incompetence by Sunderland and more specifically Yunus Kabul in the defence. He was just awful.
Have you got a quote from Kabul's agent?
I have. 2008, I was kind of like, you know what, Yunus Kabul, he went to Sunderland. He was one of the kind of transfers, I guess, that went under the radar. Found an excellent quote from his agent saying he wouldn't move to Sunderland even if there was an earthquake in 2008. Well, there's been an earthquake in London, apparently, because he's now up there. Well,
but the thing that gets me about that quote is, why would an earthquake even make him think twice about it? Oh, there's an earthquake. Oh, now I should move. Now is the right time. But he wouldn't do it even if there was an earthquake. And now he's there in their centre back situation, which is, and I call it a partnership, but it's not a partnership, Kino. It's a situation.
There is something I don't understand what quite is wrong with Sunderland. whatever the signings they seem to make. Like last year, I thought Giaccherini would have been a really good signing for them. And they seem to, and like Rodwell, and they seem to make every now and then some pretty good business, and it never comes off. I don't know what is sort of affecting their new signings that causes them to play in the exact same way season in, season out, but it just looks like they picked up from where they left off.
Yeah, you don't see managers very often say, I don't want to manage this club anymore. And then I think his wife was sent some flowers, and then he was like, all right, yeah, I'll do another year.
Yeah, I think that was quite telling, actually. That he sort of...
At what point yesterday do you think he thought, probably should have just like stayed at home, really?
Yeah.
I mean, flowers weren't enough to get me to manage Sunderland for another season. But credit to Leicester, though. They've done well there. Some of their new boys looked relatively good as well. Okazaki made his first start. Japanese Jack, you must be
He did. Well, that's a throwback to the World Cup. I was very excited to see him play, although he did miss a sitter in the second half. One thing I didn't actually realise about this, and I don't know what fixtures Leicester have kind of coming up, but they have the most Premier League points since the start of April out of all the teams in the league. Like, are Leicester going to be this team that get off to this storming start and kind of pick up from last season, or is this kind of the should we say the honeymoon period where I don't know?
Yeah, I know what you mean. I still, and me and Ben said this when Ranieri was appointed, I still think Ranieri is still one of the more likely managers to be sacked, possibly before Christmas or
Shall I give you Leicester's fixtures, by the way?
Hit me with them. I'm curious.
So from now until November, okay? West Ham, Tottenham, Bournemouth, Villa, Stoke, Arsenal, Norwich, Southampton, Palace, West Brom, Watford, Newcastle, and then Manchester United at the end of November. That's not that hard.
No.
I think it's going to be important to them that they get that decent points total early on, and then don't get sucked down. I actually think they've got enough quality.
December's horrible, by the way. I should say December is Swansea away, Chelsea, Everton away, Liverpool, and Manchester City.
What's their running like at the end of the year? Just out of curiosity, because for me, Leicester are a team who they look really good, but I fear they're going to be one of these teams that kind of have that great start to the year and then just seem to capitulate. I don't know if you can remember, and this is a random example to pull out, but kind of Blackpool when they had their 1 year in the Premier League where they were kind of top 10 at Christmas, and then it all they couldn't win a game for the rest of the year, and that's kind of I don't know.
Teams that do that usually stay up, but just.
Yeah.
Because Hull did it 1 year as well. They're running into Manchester United, Everton, and Chelsea. United and Chelsea are both away as well.
That's you're going to need to be safe for those games.
My big worry with Leicester and Ranieri, because I've said that I think Leicester will go down, which upsets every fan of a club that you say ever goes down, because they just all get on your back. But the reason is, I think Leicester are the sort of team, and Ranieri is the sort of manager that if they start losing games, where's the win going to come from? That's my big worry. Ranieri's not the kind of manager that will G you up for the next game, or say, look, forget everything that's gone. Let's go again. I worry that they'll just be sort of bouncing along this sort of defeat train, and eventually they'll just have to go. But they've beaten Sunderland, who actually also think will go down on the opening day. So I don't know. Maybe that's a little bit of good fortune for Leicester that their fixture list is as it is. But I'm a little worried for them.
What do you think of Sunderland's transfers? Because they've tried to strengthen up the defence seemingly. I know they've brought in Mvio, who seems to be this kind of saviour in the eyes of a lot of Sunderland fans who they think is going to save them. He got sent off today in their under-21s game after getting an assist, to be fair to him. But I look at that Sunderland team, and I said this to you, I actually think their biggest strength is going to be going forward. You've got Jermaine Defoe there. Jermaine Defoe's a goal scorer. I think he'll fit a similar mould to kind of Ings and Austin last year in terms of he'll get double figures, but it just won't be enough.
Possibly.
I missed you, Jack.
The Ings and Austin mould.
Everyone remember that Jermaine Defoe call from Jack there on the opening day of the
season? Well, he got one yesterday.
I don't think I don't know how old he is now, but he's in his mid-30s. I don't think he'll be able to sustain.
32.
I don't think he'll be able to sustain top goal scoring form throughout the season. And then if you look at Sunderland's other strikers, players like Stephen Fletcher, they let Wickham go.
Danny Graham's a great player, to be fair.
Exactly, Danny Graham.
I'm a fan. Well, the thing is, this idea that Defoe had like a great season last year, he got 4 in 17. Like, I know he came in towards the January period, but 4 in 17 is not going to keep you up in the Premier League. So to say he might sort of temper off. That's the season before he went to Toronto, by the way. He got 1 in 14 for Spurs. Yeah. So in his last 30 plus games in the Premier League, he's got 5 goals. And that ain't going to keep you up. And admittedly, he's got 1-1 this season, so he might do fine. But yeah, it's going to be a row. Should we move on though? Should we go from sort of the bottom of the table, or the predicted bottom of the table, towards the top end of the table, and take a look at Mourinho's boys, Kino, who struggled, didn't look them normal selves.
Yeah. My fantasy team, my fantasy football team today, and I'm sure many other fantasy football teams around the country were let down a bit by Courtois being sent off midway through the second half.
Was it a red?
I think so. Yeah, you can't come out that fast and have that sort of impact with a player, whether he did touch him or not. You can't have that sort of perceived impact with a player as a goalkeeper and expect to get away with it today.
What do you reckon, Jack?
Well, I know there's going to be the argument of, he was going away from goal, Gomez. I think it was Gomez who was through. But in my eyes, he has to knock it that way around him because he knows he's going to get clattered in that moment. If the keeper's not there, of course he's going to run towards goal. But it doesn't make sense for him to kick the ball at the goalkeeper when he's about to get clattered, because otherwise it can look like the keeper's won the ball.
Well, actually, I mean that refereeing decision, as we'll get onto later, of all the ones at the weekend, that was probably the least contested one. I think most people kind of thought that it was.
Yeah. People were saying, Gary Cahill would have got there. Yeah, he would, because Courtois kicked Gomez in the testicles. So yes, Gary Cahill would have gotten there, because Gomez is going to be on the floor at this point. He's nowhere near the ball. And I think you're right, that he wouldn't take it away from goal if Courtois hadn't sprinted out and wrecked him effectively. But I thought Chelsea didn't look that good. And on the reverse of that, Swansea, Jack, looked very good.
Well, they did. And it I think it took everyone by kind of surprise, but they had some really cracking kind of standout performance. I thought AU played really, really well for them. Obviously got off kind of his Premier League goal scoring tally on his debut away at the Bridge, which, I mean, you can't really complain about. And to be honest, for large spells of the game, particularly after the red card, they looked, more than a match for Chelsea for, large spells. Chelsea, they had some fortune about their goals. I think there's no denying that. You look at Chelsea's goals, they obviously had the Oscar free kick, which just kind of went straight in. It's one of those bizarre ones where kind of everyone looks around a little bit confused. And then they had the deflected goal. I honestly think, and this might sound very bizarre, and I'm sure Swansea fans will agree, they can feel slightly aggrieved not to go away with all 3 points from the game, because I think they were the better team by quite a margin on the day.
They looked far more likely towards the end of the game. Go on, Keenan.
Sure. I mean, carrying on from that, they like Sunderland, but in the opposite way, have picked up from where they left off last season with their record points total that Gary Monk took them to. I really like the way that Gary Monk goes about the job. He doesn't make a lot of headlines in the way that other managers in the league do, but he's very, very he's astute tactically. He obviously can motivate players very well. He's young, British, and he's made some good signings. Like you said, Andre Ayew. Some might say the good Ayew. I mean, we've paid a lot of money for the other one.
Just to clarify, Kino, for those that don't know, who do you support?
Aston Villa.
Tim Sherwood's boys.
Timmy's boys.
Thanks for Benteke.
Yeah, thanks very much. Cheers for Benteke. We also Delph sends his regards. But Swansea, you mentioned Sunderland there, which is funny really, because Swansea are building year on year, and they're creating something quite special there. I think Sigurdsson's a great player. AU looked like he could slot into any team in the league. I'm not saying that lightly. Like his work ethic and his ability to get back onto the ball after losing the ball is something you don't see from a lot of wingers in this division. And I think he'll be a star this year. I really do. I think if he stays fit, I think he'll be one of the top 10 players in the league. Easily team of the year. I'm calling it now.
Yeah,
oh, no, that's going to be used in some sort of thing we do next year. Oh no. Okay, go on.
It does say a lot about how much Swansea have developed in stature as a club since they got promoted. Because, like you say, you could have gone to, apart from maybe the top 3 sides in the league, he could have gone to play for anyone he likes, and he chose Swansea on a free transfer. So it is an impressive signing, and it just shows how far Swansea have come.
Yeah, what do we think about Chelsea? Just in a word, Jack, because I've not spoke to you and Kino about Chelsea too much. Actually, no, Kino did. We did talk about Chelsea briefly.
A little bit, yeah.
But where do you think they'll finish, Jack?
I still think they're going to win the league. I feel like some people will look at their team and go, they've not made that many changes, and all the other teams chasing behind them have made their changes. But I just think Chelsea didn't need to make any changes this summer. I think they had a very well-balanced team. I know they're trying to bring in John Stones, who I think could contest for perhaps Cahill's position towards the end of the season. But I just think they're such a well-oiled machine. They're well-balanced. They brought in Falcao, which, to be honest, I get why they've brought in another striker, but at the same time, I don't think he's going to have that big great impact for them.
I think Falcao's season will depend on the form of Diego Costa.
And his injury proneness, I guess, because that was something that did become a problem.
Yeah. And because Chelsea is a strange team where they can play two different styles of football. With Remy, they're going to play a far more sort of counter-attacky, pacey system. With Costa and Falcao, they'll hold it up a little bit more. They'll do sort of the doggy work, if you like. So it'd be interesting to see which way Chelsea decide to go when they've got two of one kind of player and one of the other. And if that could be influenced more within a game, because against Swansea, they look like they were out of ideas at times. But let's move on to the first game of the Premier League season. There was a cracking goal in this one. It was Manchester United versus Tottenham Hotspur, and Kyle Walker, Keno, he's made an error there, I would say.
Well, breaking records, as probably most of you have seen. The first time ever the Premier League season has started with an own goal.
Yeah.
I think, to be fair though, I think Rooney would probably have slotted that home. But yeah, it was. Apart from that, it wasn't a particularly exciting game for the opener, I thought.
Did you guys think it was a little bit bizarre that Rooney took a touch in the situation he did?
He looked like it was the first game. He didn't look that sharp. He looked
like a player who hadn't played up front for a long time.
True.
I thought.
Yeah.
It looked a little bit like that. Usually you'd see Rooney on the edge. He's got a little bit more time, but that instinct of I've got to hit this just didn't look there.
No, I agree. What did you make of the way they lined up? I was a little bit surprised, and there was so much space on that pitch because of the way they were playing. And I didn't get why Mata was out wide. And sorry to kind of go into the tactical side of like the shape of this, but this game didn't have a lot going on, but it was still quite interesting to watch in terms of United's shape to me didn't make that much sense. I don't know where Depay or Memphis played last year, because I believe he obviously played as a number 10, and I think that's where he played a lot last year, but he has played out wide, and to me, I didn't really get why him and Mata weren't the other way around.
Well, I thought playing Eric Dyer as a holding midfielder on Depay was quite a good move from Pochettino. And you're right in the sense that it wasn't that interesting a game in terms of the events, but it was quite interesting to see how they set up tactically. Tottenham were pressing like really high in the first sort of half an hour of the match, which I think is what we might do actually, the Villa, when we play them on Friday. And I think that is the way that you can get at United, especially with Blind and Smalling at centre-half right now. And then they sort of ran out of steam, and it kind of, United began to press them a bit more. And it was kind of a game, it was a game of two halves in the sense that after Tottenham ran out of half, United started to come on top a bit, but neither could really convert.
Yeah, intriguingly from that game, the one thing I took out of it was United could do with a really like roamy kind of winger, some pace out there, but they've sold him to PSG for 43 million, which is one of the most curious sales of a player I've seen in the Premier League for a while.
I honestly think Pedro's going to be in by the end of this week.
That would be such a good signing, and again, it'll annoy me.
I think he's the kind of player who they need based off that game. I think he's the kind of player who would have been ideal to plonk out wide. The fact Mata was cramping up towards the end of the game really gives you an idea of how much running he was having to do.
Yeah, and you could then play Pedro out wide. You could rotate Mata and Memphis in the centre.
You could even drop Mata deeper. I still think Mata with a decent defensive midfielder like Carrick or Schneiderlin could do a job for you as kind of a more deep kind of pulling the strings kind of midfielder.
Jack, where would you fit Ashley Young into the team?
Oh, he can play fullback. Speaking of fullbacks, to be fair, new signing, is it Damian? Damian. He was quality. He looked right at home there. There was loads of space for him out on the right to run into, which he utilised well, and there seemed to be a little bit of synergy going on there. I kind of feel like United for a few years now have lacked a proper fullback. You kind of had Evra at left back, who kind of had that niche at left back, and even at right back, there's not really been a proper right back. You had Valencia and Young last year, who seemed to be the go-to players a lot of the time.
Well, they played a three, didn't they? And then played wing backs. But I thought actually, speaking of the left back position, I thought Damian had a great game, but I thought Luke Shaw had a good game as well.
Yeah.
It's a big season for Luke Shaw.
Well, I think that United fans will be quite happy in the fact that it seems as though they have now fixed those two position problems for them in the long term. As long as those two players, Damian and Shaw, can stay fit and develop gradually over time, it's two really good moves. Probably Damian, one of the most underrated moves this summer in the transfer market, I would say.
Yeah, definitely. And he was making the runs you expect from a Manchester United fullback. And I think that would have been the most pleasing thing from a Manchester United standpoint, Louis van Gaal standpoint, that he wasn't just He wasn't just defending; he was breaking forward and creating as well. And I think if you play for Manchester United, that's what you've got to do.
Definitely.
Yeah, so I liked him a lot. I thought he was good. Spurs, on the other hand, what do you think about Kane? I thought he looked ridiculously isolated.
My big worry for Spurs this year is that last year without Kane's goals, they would have been nowhere near top 5. They would have been lucky to finish ahead of Southampton. You look at their team, I think Eriksen got 10 and 2 assists, and then Kane was like the big goal-scoring outlet, really. They need a striker. Spurs need... I know they've been linked with Charlie Austin for £15 million. There seems to be a few players going after him.
You get a chance to mention a striker.
Well, no, because it is a genuine talking point. And the fact of the matter is that the QPR manager in the post-match press conference was asked about the fact Spurs and Newcastle are looking at him and had to address the fact that QPR want £15 million of Charlie Austin. Spurs, I think there's a real shortage of strikers at the moment in the Premier League. I think you look at the teams, Everton need a striker, Spurs probably need a striker, Newcastle need a striker. I'd even argue Manchester United need a striker or two, really, because they've got Hernandez and Rooney, and that's kind of it. So I mean, that would be my big worry for Spurs. I think Spurs need 2 or 3 players in the kind of next few weeks before the window closes. I mean, I think the only reason Adebayor hasn't left yet is because there isn't a striker to fill his boots. Obviously, there's Soldado there, but I mean,
and Adebayor doesn't want to come to the Villa.
Oh,
as he said, he doesn't want to go.
Well, I think he was at Bodymoor for two days last week, past his medical, and I think it's broken down because he doesn't want to leave London and move to Birmingham.
Nah, he doesn't want to battle Rudy Gusted.
Well, yeah, more on that later.
Well, we could do a little bit more on that now if you like,
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we could go on to the 3 promoted teams.
I was just going to quickly, if we could, talk about De Gea. That's I think that's a massive thing that we could have missed here. But the fact that he has not played, and
there's so much to fit in after a summer.
I know.
This time next week though, De Gea could have signed a new contract, or he could have gone.
I don't think from Van Gaal's post-match interview, he doesn't seem to know himself what the situation is. It's kind of. Pre-match, Van Gaal was kind of like, he's not in the right place mentally. There's been all this interest kind of coming in. We're going to play Romero instead. I now look at it, and I think he's going. And the reason I think he's going is because of Van Gaal afterwards kind of saying he could be gone by the end of the week, rather than saying, he's just not mentally right and he could be back if he's... Van Gaal's kind of... I think he's conceding defeat in a way. I think he's on his way to Real, and... I actually don't think Romero's that bad of a goalkeeper. I think he's been getting so much slating, but he's played in a World Cup and games don't get bigger than that. And you look at him, and there was a few times when he looked a little bit nervy, but by the end of the game, he was pulling out some pretty decent saves because Spurs were really kind of knocking at the door towards the end of the game.
Yeah, no, I think De Gea is going to go. I think he's always sort of been set up to stay, but will always go. Obviously, if he doesn't go now, we'll definitely go at the end of the season. Real's the only team he's going to go to. I think United are fighting a losing battle there. They're not going to get to keep him.
Like you say, I don't think they need to try and really hang on to him if if Real are going to give them 20 million plus for him.
Yeah.
I forget how much they bought him for.
Around 19, I think.
Yeah. So you'd think that United would at least want to make 5 or 6 million profit on that sale, considering that he's arguably twice the keeper now than when they signed him 3 years ago.
United fans are disappointed that they've sat and watched him develop, and they've the club's effectively developed him, and then he's going to give them nothing back and just go to Real like so many players seem to do. That pull of Real's a little bit too strong. But let's go on to the promoted clubs then. We'll start with Bournemouth, who obviously won the Championship last year, and they took on the mighty Villa, Kino. And I feel like at this point, me and Jack should hand over to you because you actually watched the game. So away you go.
Well, I guess it was quite disappointing for Bournemouth after all the sort of hype, and I think they are, of the 3 teams that have come up, probably, I don't know if you two would agree, maybe the neutrals' favourite out of the 3 teams. And the mighty Villa boys crashed the party. I
want to get a mighty Villa boys counter going this season as to how many times it's said, because I feel like it's going to be used far too often.
I want Sherwood to refer to Villa now as my mighty Villa boys. That's what I want to say.
Boys. Well, yeah, Bournemouth started really well, as you'd expect from a team in their position, just promoted. and we had to weather the storm really for the first half. It wasn't that pretty. They missed a few really good chances. I didn't think either team played particularly well, and actually I was kind of surprised with how, particularly in the second half, how direct Bournemouth became. I think they were very desperate to leave an impression, and in the second half, even after they bought Max Gradon, who looked really good, and he'll be a good signing for them. They still looked very direct, and Gradle's the kind of player that you want to try and get in behind the fullbacks, play inside on the floor, slip him in. And he did do that once or twice, but it was an individual thing, and they were playing lots of long balls out to Matt Ritchie, who was then lumping it into the box, which Kieran Clark and Michael Richards dealt with really well, and I think they were our two standout performers in the game, because we had to defend quite well. It wasn't a particularly graceful attacking performance from us, and I think it'll take a month or two for all the signings to bed in. But I wasn't expecting to come away with 3 points. So I think it's got to go down as a good result, really.
But Bournemouth are interesting because they kept the team they put out is by and large the team they had last year. With maybe one or two exceptions. Like, you look at the bench they had. Mings was on the bench. They brought Gradle on. Atsu wasn't in the first 11. Bamford didn't play either. So, no, surprise, because I'll tell you.
Bamford's at Palace.
This is at Palace. That's why.
Can I was just going to say. Sorry, I want to mention something because you've kind of got me thinking. But Joshua King was the only player who started for Bournemouth who they signed in the summer, and he's an absolutely rapid player. They've signed him from Blackburn. Of course, the other Blackburn striker who moved this window to the Premier League was Gested, who scored 32 in 60 games, I think, for Blackburn. I really think that shows a contrast in kind of the Villa's approach and kind of Bournemouth's approach. Bournemouth have kind of, signed this absolutely rapid striker, and I don't think that works that well in the Premier League. I think you can have an incredibly nippy striker and he'll get a few goals, but I think a player like Gested is actually going to be a lot better investment for Villa than Joshua King is.
But he suits Villa. Like Gested suits Villa because Villa have just played with Benteke, whereas Bournemouth play with Callum Wilson, who's like sort of like King's more to the mould of the Bournemouth team than Gested would be. And
you say about the signings, like I was sometimes sticking with the team that got you promoted backfires, like we saw with say Blackpool. Obviously, they didn't have a lot of money, but they still stuck with that.
They didn't have a lot of money. They didn't get spent, did it, Mr. Oyston? Sorry, I've just gone a bit off topic.
He's our dickhead of the week every week. If we had a feature called Dickhead every week, Carl Oyston would be Dickhead of the week.
Until someone is an absolutely massive dickhead for some reason in the season, Carl Oyston remains the ForTheFans dickhead.
Like, we don't like Sepp Blatter, but Carl Oyston is still Dickhead of the week. That's how bad the situation is at Blackpool.
But yeah, or you could do a Burnley like that. Those two kind of teams spring to mind. You can do that, or Swansea, and it can work. You can stick with the team that got you promoted, and it can work quite well. Or you can go the other way and spend a lot of money on players who have, quote unquote Premier League experience, which can work, and sometimes it backfires, like with QPR. Yeah. I was surprised that Mings didn't play, particularly against because I've seen him play a couple of times. I'm surprised they didn't play him, especially with Gabby starting for us and the pace in behind. Gabby, although he was quiet in the first half, when he moved out wide and we brought Gested on, he started to get a lot more joy in running in behind the centre halves from a wide area. And I was surprised that they didn't go with Mings to start with. Like I said, Gradle looked really good. They've signed kind of. They've not made a lot of signings, but I think the ones they have made are quite good, and I think Bournemouth will be okay this season.
It's a bit patronising. I think Bournemouth will be sort of. I did a prediction table where it had them mid-table, but I do think, and it's not just based on this season. I just think that Bournemouth are the only team in the entire league, and I'm including Norwich and Watford in this, that if they go down, it'll be a shrug of the shoulders and 60 million boys. Like I know it sounds a little bit sort of. It does sound a bit patronising to be like, oh, enjoy the time you're there. But for a club like Bournemouth, who had less than 12,000 people there yesterday, this is like dream stuff. This season, no matter what happens, they can't lose. They're going to have the greatest time. I
mean, my brother's down in uni at Bournemouth, and he gets to train with their goalkeeper coaches a few times a week at their facilities, because the club and the university share the same facilities. And he was saying the general kind of consensus is to be they've done amazing to get there, but they don't expect to stay up.
Yeah. And if they go down, no one's going to go, Eddie Howe, poor manager. They're going to go, look at the resources. Compare them to any other team in the entire league.
In the same way that Burnley had, last season with Sean Dyche, I don't think he lost any credit from the season they had.
Yeah, exactly. And it was, at no point was anyone saying, oh, Sean Dyche should probably lose his job. It was everyone understood the situation. They didn't stay up. They might well be better for it. They might have a much better season this year. Go up again with a better quality of squad, a lot more money in the coffers, and come back up and do good things. But another promoted side who did very well up until the last 5 minutes when Everton equalised were Watford, Jack, who, well, they played well and Everton's fans booed at half time, which is ridiculous.
I feel sorry for Everton, but I think there's a lesson to be learned for the newly promoted teams by how Watford approached this game. And in both the kind of Norwich game and the Bournemouth game, both of those two teams had chances to be taken away, and they both failed. You know, there was spells in both games where those teams deserved to get goals, and they should have been ahead early on. I believe Bournemouth did have more possession than Villa. I know Norwich, who we'll come on to, had something like 65% possession. Whereas Watford get 2 goals, they had 33% possession. It was a plucky performance by them. And I honestly think Watford are probably the most likely out of the newly promoted teams to stay up, just based on the kind of their approach in terms of the amount of money they've spent. We talked about Bournemouth having not spent much. Norwich not really spent a ton, really.
I don't think Norwich know they've gone up.
No.
Based on the signings they've made, I'm not sure they entirely know they're even there. But go on.
But you look at the Watford side, they've added some nice quality, and I'm quite excited to see how they get on. And I think this result against Everton signs of things to come. I think Everton, not the best half of them. I know the fans are booing them. I think the Everton fans are forgetting where they were, just before Christmas last year, kind of November time, where they were right down there and relegation was a prospect. In the end, they finished, I think, 10th or 11th.
I think 11th sounds familiar.
So I think for them, they're not going to be going anywhere. I don't think Everton. I think Martinez has come out and said they need 3 signings to be competitive. I look at Watford. I think they look very good. I think they got 2 goals away against Everton. Despite Everton perhaps not being the team they were a few years ago, an away point against Everton is nothing to be kind of scoffed at for them.
Yeah, I think with Everton, it's interesting because you say that they're going to be fine, but I don't know if that's enough for Everton. I think Everton want to be, like, if they could pick a position to finish every season and they knew they were going to finish there, they'd probably take 7th every year. So anything other than 7th, because I think they think their squad is the 7th best squad in the division, is a disappointment. I think last year was a big disappointment. I think 11th, because it didn't build on last season. And I think as a fan of a football club, you want to build on what you've seen previously. And if you don't, it's always going to be a disappointment. And that was the problem with Everton last year. Whereas Watford, I think you're right. I think, I want to mention Deeney as well. Didn't score yesterday. But I think you see players come up from the Championship who don't perform very well. And then occasionally you see a player come up and you think, do you know what, he'll fit in around here. And I think Deeney is that striker. I think Deeney will fit in around here.
Mm-hmm. I think so too.
What did you think of? I'm going to butcher this name, so I'm sorry. What fans is it? Ikalo, Ikalo? He's one of their strikers. He's actually the top goal scorer in the Football League for 2015 with 17 goals. He got the second goal for them off the bench, which was a cracking finish. Shouldn't forget about Barkley's either. But I really liked how Watford set up for this game because they've been playing with 2 strikers for a while, and what they did when Ikalo came on was they played him just behind Deeney. So they were kind of playing 2 strikers. And I think Norwich have something to learn by that because I guess we'll talk about Norwich in a second. But the way they approached the game was they had Houlihan, who I love Houlihan, but he's more of an impact player off the bench. He's struggled the few times where he's played in the Premier League.
He's a great Championship player.
I wonder if for Norwich playing, a Jerome ahead of a Hooper or something like that would work better. And I think Watford's boldness to be willing at 1-1 against Everton to throw on a second striker and really go for it, I think that's big for them, and I think that's going to help them a lot this year.
You could see Norwich, but we'll come on to Norwich. But I think Watford have done great, and I don't want to not talk about them. But you've brought up Norwich. I think like Wolfswinkel's still there. Maybe play him and Jerome. Wolfswinkel's more of kind of he's not the in behind kind of striker. He's a bit more sort of hold up play, smart finish in the box if he gets the opportunities, which he never got that under Houghton at any point, which was to his detriment really. But you're right. I think Norwich do need to learn from Watford's sort of approach to the Premier League because they look poor, frankly. Yesterday, Norwich looked like a team that have got a lot of energy and a lot of sort of ideas, but are unable to put them into practice because their team isn't as good as those around them. And Palace made them look silly yesterday,
In contrast, I was going to say, in contrast to the great performance from Palace, who have improved like bit by bit since they were promoted, and now they really look like they're hitting their stride as an established Premier League team with the signings they're making and the football they're playing, and they look really good yesterday. I thought.
I thought they looked okay. I think saying they looked really good is perhaps a bit generous. I think Norwich dominated for large spells. I think 20 minutes into the game, they probably should have been a goal ahead. I can't remember who it was now. He missed a sitter. I think Palace's 2 goals prior to the third one, which came, with basically all the heads having dropped for a decision I guess we'll come on to in a second. Crystal Palace's goals weren't them creating chances and creating the goals. It was not giving them the opportunity to seize upon kind of easy chances. I think the first goal just came from Norwich being perhaps a little bit too keen to throw men forward. Basson gets pulled across and suddenly there's this big kind of gap in the centre where the ball just gets pulled in and they're a man short. And then the second goal for Palace was a set piece. I feel like
that defending, by the way, the defending for both goals was dreadful. Just like it wasn't even Championship standard. It was worse than that. They've got to be more switched on. Roddy could have easily, not easily saved, but he could have saved the first one. And the second one is just an entire back line focus. And it was mentioned on Match of the Day, actually. I can't remember who said it. It might be Murphy, Danny Murphy, who's I recommend to any pundit fans out there. The ball's knocked in, it's headed back across, and if the ball's dropping twice, it's dreadful. Carry on, Jack, sorry.
So we had kind of these 2 Palace goals, and then Redmond comes on off the bench. I'm not sure why he didn't start. I don't know if he's not quite match fit, still a little bit kind of jaded perhaps from his summer, because obviously he's been playing for the under-21s and stuff. Not that they got very far. And then Jerome comes on and scores to make it 2-2, and it's disallowed for perhaps the most controversial decision of the weekend. I almost feel like you could make a case for the penalty decision that came later. But if you missed it, Jerome kind of seizes upon the third ball as the ball kind of bobs up in the air from a corner, and he kind of hooks his foot around it over his shoulder into the top corner. And the refs disallowed it for a high foot. I don't know what you think about it, Ben or Kino, but for me, if you're going to disallow that kind of goal, we're never going to see an overhead kick again in football without a foul being given.
Again, you mentioned Match of the Day. They showed the Graziano Pelle goal from last season. I think it was against QPR. I think it was against QPR when he did his foot reached that exact same height, and it was given. It was a really good goal actually from Pelle, and he did a very, very similar manoeuvre to what Jerome did, and the goal was just stood freely. So I think that should have counted. It was a really good finish from Jerome. He would be disappointed.
I think it's a thing is, I'd like to say it's an appalling referee's decision, but the ref gives the goal and then stops it. The linesman obviously says, hey, I think that's a high foot. I don't know why the linesman thinks he's got a better angle than the ref in that situation, and the referee just takes his word for it. Because if you watch it back, the ref gives the goal, points to centre spot, says let's go again. It's just.
I think one of the telling things was the fact only one Palace player appealed for the high foot. The rest of them dropped their heads, were turning around and ready to go. I mean, there was that decision, and then there was obviously the penalty decision late on, which wasn't so much a big fanfare made about this. I think more so because the disallowed goal overshadowed it. But again, I think it's a foul. One thing I found quite amusing, kind of just looking into Premier League results, I like to hear what fans are saying. I went on the Crystal Palace subreddit, and they had given man of the match to Simon Hooper, the referee. So that really gives you an idea of what the Palace fans thought about. I think a lot of them felt quite fortunate that they won. Obviously, Kabay does get that goal at the end to make it 3-1. I mean, Palace, you mentioned, Kino, about how they built their team up. Their team, scarily good. There was talk at the start of the season.
I wouldn't go that far. I wouldn't go.
So what I mean by scary good is I think the newly promoted teams, I think if Norwich play any other team kind of that you might think of Palace's stature, they probably play 2 up top at home. And I think Norwich were quite respectful of that. You look at Palace, they finished 10th last year with a good run in under Pardew towards the end of the year. I actually think they could get top 7. You look at their bench, they had Bamford, Balassi, Jedinak, Gale, Wickham and Martin Kelly. We'll just ignore Martin Kelly from that list. But you look at that bench, they're players who I honestly think could easily start a decent chunk of games for a team like Bournemouth, a team like Norwich, a team like, I want to say Sunderland, but obviously Wickham wouldn't. But I don't know. Palace, for me, are a team that could quite easily challenge for a top 7, and I think they could be the Southampton of this season.
I think that's mental.
Do you think Palace could be?
I think they're okay. I think 10th is probably about right.
When I said they looked really good as an established Premier League team earlier, all they have to do to be in that middle band is to beat the quite poor teams below them, teams like Norwich and Bournemouth. And just put them away, and you'll pick up enough points in the league with other points elsewhere coming, in more unlikely places. to be in that kind of 12th to sort of 9th bracket every year.
Yeah. The big thing about Southampton last year as well was that they would play well and get points against the big sides, against the top 7, and I'm not sure, and that's what it'll come down to. That's kind of what it'll come down to if they're going to make that upper step. That I don't think their squad, I don't think their back line is good enough to compete with the top teams.
I was about to say Southampton's defence helped them massively. Just one more thing I want to mention about Palace before we perhaps move on to Norwich a little bit more was I loved Pardew's little quote that he gave after the game. After about 5 minutes, I realised I picked the wrong team today, and it kind of reminded me of, like, when you're playing Football Manager and you're hitting spacebar to get through the dates, and then it's like, oh crap, I've just confirmed my team. That's kind of how I imagine Pardew, like on the Saturday morning. Kind of, I must finish pre-season quickly and. Well, it was a bit.
Pardew's a bit of an idiot, isn't he? Really?
It's a little bit honest. I'd almost hope that he wouldn't do that. It's a bit like you kind of, I don't know, going on a flight on an aeroplane, you arrive at your destination, and then the pilot goes, "By the way, I was drunk," kind of thing. Where you're like, "Oh, now you tell us that." It's kind of at the end of it all, he goes, "Actually, I made a mistake there." Yeah. But what do you guys think about Norwich? They haven't won an opening game in 13 years. So, I wasn't really expecting them to be.
League?
No, in the last 13 years, they've not won their opening game.
Questionable. I think they are about 3 players away from staying up, and they've got less than a month to do it. They better do it quickly, otherwise they're going to be in a spot of bother last year. And I will change my Premier League prediction table. They've been linked with Quintero, which seems mad, but a player like that is what they need. An upgrade of Wes Hoolahan, which isn't Graham Dorrans, and Norwich might have a bit of a chance next year. You've got a few stats on Jerome, Jack.
Oh, I have. So I was kind of looking into Jerome because I feel like he, in most people's eyes, is the striker who has the best chance of getting the goals for Norwich. And I was looking at it. His goal scoring record in the Premier League isn't great. He's got 30 goals in 176 games, and his highest seasonal total was 10 in 2009 for Birmingham City. Now, Keno, don't chip in here because I know you could be biased, but I feel like Ben wants to back Jerome's corner here because.
I would be interested to know how many of those appearances are substitute appearances, because he's been at clubs where I can imagine him being brought on as a bit of an impact player. And he scored a lot of goals last year for Norwich as the main focal point. I think he plays far better when Redmond's on the pitch as well. And obviously, if we think the goal that was ruled out is bollocks, so if that goes in, we probably don't even have this discussion because he's got 1 in 1.
I don't know. I feel like Norwich's big issue is actually that I don't think they've got a proven striker in the Premier League. I feel like Jerome's perhaps the closest they've got to that. You look at their other strikers, they've got Grabham, who they signed from Bournemouth, who I'm not convinced is Premier League quality. Yeah. They've got Hooper, who's had a season to try and prove himself before. Didn't do that. He had an okay season in the Championship, but he didn't look out of his league in the Championship.
In fairness, though, not many teams do have a proven Premier League striker. None of the 3 promoted teams do. And then do Leicester? Is a show out?
I guess I'm not so much saying they're not proven as in most cases, with the exception of Grabham, they've had chances to prove themselves and they haven't.
Okay, I guess. Well, Jerome is our only real example for that, and Wolfswinkel played in a shit Norwich team under Houghton. I would say it was. Actually, no, the team wasn't that bad, but tactically it was horrific. Any Norwich fan will tell you that.
I should also point out with that Jerome stat, he's got 9 goals in his last 78 appearances in the Premier League, which...
Well, good luck, Norwich.
yeah, like it's actually got worse over time, his goal-scoring record.
We're flying away, boys, by the way. We've been going for ages. We'll carry on, though, shall we? With today's games, we'll talk about them a little more briefly, because obviously they might be a bit more fresh in the memory for you if you're listening to this. But if you didn't, we'll start with the Arsenal game, who have got a very surprising defeat to West Ham. Keno.
I did catch almost all of this game today, and there was a few standout points for me. It seemed like Arsenal do this every year on the opening day. I remember we went there and beat them 2 seasons ago, and that was when they were calling for Wenger's head, and he made
they booed a lot. I remember.
They did, and it was similar today. I thought Payet for West Ham was fantastic, and he could be a fantastic player for them this season. And also a special mention to 16-year-old Reece Oxford, was it in the second?
It's indeed. England. Is he England under-17s captain? I know he's captain for one of the England junior teams, but...
He's 16.
It's mad, isn't it? Like, I think they said he's the 2nd youngest ever Premier League player behind Jose Baxter. Or so, there was some stat like that.
It's so depressing.
It is.
It's so sad. Keno, you say that. You're quite a bit younger than me as well. Honestly, it's awful. It's awful. He's born after my sister. And she's like 18. It's awful. Honestly, I hate it. Well done to him. Good lad.
He's a giant as well. I'm just like, is he going to stop growing? Because he's a centre back, so obviously he needs that height. But he's taller than half the West Ham players on the pitch.
I think he will stop growing. I'm calling it now. I think at some point he'll stop.
Well, he's 16. He can grow a few inches. Yeah, I'm expecting 7-foot tall centre back in a few years for England, and we'll be laughing.
He wouldn't start because he plays for West Ham, and Rodgson wouldn't pick him. So.
I loved how someone mentioned in jest, I can't wait to see Chelsea sign him. I know we didn't really talk about the John Stones thing, but I guess we'll talk about that maybe in a little bit. But my worry is that if he can have like an incredible season, age 16 for West Ham, is one of the big teams just going to go and like hoover him up, or at West Ham at a stage now as a club where they can hold on to a player like him?
If a big club wants him, he'll go. I think, won't he? Player of the game, Keno. Tell me about who he is.
Is this a trick question or is this?
It was the guy. It was that lovely tricky winger at West Ham.
Payet.
Yes.
He was fantastic. It was a really good performance. He out Oxlade-Chamberlain.
He did,
because he in the same position he was by far the better performer on the day. And Zarate played really well. I was quite surprised by West Ham, but it is important to remember that they've already played, I think, 6 competitive matches this year
against Andorran teams.
Yeah, but they've still been
competitive, and they've been knocked out.
Yeah, by a Romanian side.
True, but they've still been playing competitive football, which Arsenal haven't. And although you would expect Arsenal to win, I wouldn't take a massive sort of.
Are you telling me the Emirates Cup isn't competitive?
Are you saying it's not? Are you saying it's not a real trophy, Jack?
I thought they'd done the pre-season treble. Arsenal, they're winning everything, weren't they?
Just one small thing with Bilic, right? He played 33 players so far this season in the Europa League, and he played James Tompkins at right back. Why is that then? Why is that happening? I was confused.
Why was he playing out wide?
What do you mean?
Sorry, I'm confused. What are you asking about James
Tompkins, centre back James Tompkins, was playing at right back
because they didn't have Carl Jenkinson because he wasn't allowed to play as part of his loan deal.
They've used 33 players. And surely there's another right back.
He didn't look out of his depth. I didn't think right. Like he didn't look natural.
He did it right, but it just seems like there's a little bit of a lack of depth there. And I don't know if Carl Jenkinson's your only right back. I feel like West Ham might need to bring in another right back.
They can just stick Reece Oxford there, can't they? They'll be sorted.
That boy can do it all, Jack.
Centre back, centre defence will be right back next week. He's going to be the next Phil Jones.
Get him on the plane for the Euros. That's what I say. Get him on that plane.
He's going to be the next Theo Walcott, isn't he? I can already see it now.
Get him on the plane. He's the new Steven Gerrard.
So if you're Arsenal, I think if you're West Ham, you look at this game, pretty pleased with how things have gone. New signings look pretty solid. But if you're an Arsenal fan, well, Arsenal were booing at the end of this game. Like, what is your thoughts? Because I thought it was just an Arsenal performance. It was very Arsenal.
I think. Go on, Gino.
Yeah, I wouldn't really take too much from it. I think Arsenal have looked good in the matches they played in pre-season, but like I said before, West Ham were probably an extra week ahead. They looked a bit sharper, just all over the pitch. So I wouldn't really. I don't think it's a personnel or tactical problem from Arsenal that they showed today. So yeah.
I guess, well, there's 2 more games to go. We'll talk about them both. I think we'll touch on them briefly, considering I don't think anyone's really seen the Newcastle game at the point of recording because it wasn't on TV. There's not much we can say about it other than Wijnaldum scored, and they've got a good draw against Southampton. So I think, as a Newcastle fan, based on last season, you're probably pretty pleased.
2 goals, that's probably more than they got in the entire of last season, so bonus.
Shane Long got one for Southampton as well in a comeback. And finally, sorry, Southampton Newcastle fans, this is just the joys of being the second half+1 game that Sky don't care about. And finally, the final game was Coutinho scored a goal. It was Coutinho 1, Stoke 0. Don't want to talk about the game. It was rubbish. I literally don't want to talk about it. I'm sorry, boys.
No, I'm going to be honest. I was watching it, sat there thinking, we're recording a podcast straight after this game. I need some talking points.
It was a great goal.
My talking point is I was more worried about falling asleep before we recorded this than what was going on. But I mean, Coutinho, a great goal, very Southampton-esque of his goal last season.
Yeah.
But I don't think there's a lot you can take away from that game as either fan. I feel Stoke might feel a little bit hard done by, but Liverpool, there was just nothing. There's no talking points about that game. It was a very boring game that was settled by just one moment of excellence in a dire game.
I did some washing up during the second half. So yeah,
That's very more exciting than what was going on. I wish I was around yours. I could have just watched you do that instead.
I dropped a frying pan. That made a noise. I tell you, that was more loud than anything that happened in the game.
Actually, more loud than the Stoke fans.
Stoke fans got pretty annoyed at throw-ins in the first half. That was what I took from the first half.
There was, I don't know if you guys noticed, but the Stoke fans very, very vocal, even about decisions that weren't their way. Yeah, I mean, nothing wrong with that. It was quite nice to hear them screaming and shouting about their team, but it's a bit bizarre. I don't know if that was an element of frustration or just like the over-enthusiasm of the start of the season, then remembering it's Stoke, so the most exciting thing is the throw-ins.
Yeah, Keno, did you enjoy that match?
Did anyone enjoy that match?
I enjoyed the goal.
The goal was good.
Philip Coutinho enjoyed that match.
He's really well. I'll tell you what, Coutinho was. I'm sorry, I'm just going to say shit. Coutinho was shit until he scored. He didn't do anything.
But Benteke fell at home, I think, because Liverpool pretty much decided they were going to play as Aston Villa. That's the style for this season. Yeah, the Villa approach.
That was what I said to you during the game. I was like, Benteke is getting as frustrated as he was last season with us.
Yeah, we only played with one winger. It doesn't really work, but. No. We'll see what happens.
We'll just sign out Bonlahor, sorted.
Just to clarify for any new listeners, me and Jack are Liverpool fans. Callum is a Villa fan, just so we've got that out in the open. But Jack, is there any other business, gentlemen, before we before we finish up?
I think there's one match tomorrow, which is City West Brom. How do you see that going?
Predictions. You've put me on the spot here.
Just a quick one. Just a little short-term prediction.
3-0 to Manchester City.
2-1 West Brom.
Oh, do you think West Brom are going to take
I don't, but I just want to be different.
No. Yeah,
Callum?
Jack's hedging it. No, I think City will win.
Who'll score? Delph? Sterling?
Delph's injured.
Well, yeah, I think Delph's still out. Which
the spirit
of heartbroken about that.
The spirit of Fabian Delph. Is it at West Brom? Sorry.
It is, yeah.
Oh, so a return to Birmingham, lucky boy. I think that pretty much wraps us up, boys. I'll say again, any other business?
Well, we were going to do predictions, but this show's gone on so long. I think we can wait one more week, and it's not going to make a massive impact on our predictions for the league and stuff.
No, yeah, we'll give that till next week.
The other thing is, we are going to want questions, aren't we, at the end of the show? That's kind of the plan, that we'll get through the fixtures a little bit quicker than we have today, but with it being first kind of weekend of the season, there's lots of talking points about new players and such. Yeah. But I think the plan is that if you want to tweet us some questions at ForTheFans Show on Twitter, you should do that.
Yeah,
let us know what you want to know and all that jazz.
So yeah, before next week's show, we'll be tweeting out on the account, and you can send them in on Twitter. Just questions. They can be serious, they can be funny, they can be even loosely football related.
They just need to be good.
Yeah, good. Just good, funny, interesting questions, and we'll go through that at the end each week, as long as we get to.
We'll ask for them on the social stuff. So you'll be there. Also, a little bit of the news: we are back on iTunes. If you've watched this on YouTube and you think, "I wish it was on iTunes," it is on iTunes. Type For The Fans Show into your search bar, and you can subscribe on iTunes. It goes there immediately every time we upload. It'll be on like Mondays, Tuesdays, maybe even Sunday night occasionally if you get lucky. So listen in, tune in, and that brings us to the end, gentlemen. It's been fun. It's nice to be back after 11 months of saying we were going to do a Champions League discussion show and then just not doing another show. So I mean, there we go. Callum, thanks for joining us.
No problem. Thank you very much.
We'll see you again next week.
I hope so.
And Jack, cheers, mate.
No worries. Pleasure to be back. Hopefully people have enjoyed the show, and if you're listening via iTunes, you don't really follow us elsewhere, and it's just kind of popped up in your I guess on your Apple device or whatever, and you've just kind of listened to this point. Thank you.
Sound like my nan there.
I'm sorry.
So from me, Dr. Benji, from Work the Space and intro maestro Callum Keane, we'll see you again next time. With love, with care. Goodbye.